Okay, so this is chapter 2 for history, case study from Nazi Germany. So we've already finished chapter 1, PPC and LON. So we're moving on to chapter 2. Chapter 2, there will be two parts to it. So I'm going to start off with the first part. So in the first part, we're looking at a case study of Nazi Germany. So for the first part, we're looking at the rise of Hitler. But prior to that, let's very quickly go through some of the background in terms of the Weimar Republic before Hitler came along. Right, so we'll quickly start off with the Weimar Republic. In this chapter, this part, we will be looking at the strength and weakness of the Weimar Republic. So the Weimar Republic was Germany's government from 1919 to 1933, and this was the period just right after World War I until the rise of Nazi Germany. Now, during this period, right, it was very uncertain. There was a lot of uncertain beginnings. There was a very slight, brief season of success. And then there was a devastating depression that caused Germany to suffer. And also the Weimar Republic experienced enough chaos to position Germany for the rise of Adolf Hitler and the Nazi Party. There are actually quite a few videos, but because these are YouTube videos, I would not be able to record them, because if I were to show them here, it would not show up in the recording later on, okay? Because once I put it up on YouTube, then it will stop me from showing, or you will not be able to see the recording. So when you come back to class, then you will be able to catch up with these recordings, or sorry, these videos. So first of all, let's look at how the Weimar government works. There is a president who is selected every 7 years, and this president is selected by the German people. So anyone above the age of 20 years old, they can vote for the Reichstag and vote for the president every 7 years. Now, the president controls the armed forces, and of course, with the help of the Reichstag, the votes with the help of the Reichstag, and that's how the president is able to have a full control. Now, under the president, all right, there is an Article 48, and in Article 48, it's during the emergency or any forms of emergency, the president can make laws without having to go through the Reichstag, which is the parliament. So he himself can make certain laws in the event of an emergency. Now, besides the president, there is also a chancellor. The chancellor is chosen by the president, and the chancellor has to be a member of the Reichstag. And of course, there is also needed to have a majority support from the Reichstag for the councillor to be selected. Okay? Even though it is chosen by the president, but they still need to have a majority support. Okay, so the Chancellor requires the support of the Houses of Parliament. There are two Houses of Parliament, the Reichstag, which is the lower house. The Reichstag lower house is actually voted by the German public using proportional representation. So later on, I will explain to you what is proportional representation. And the Reichstag, which is the upper house. So each German state will send their representative and they will sit in the upper house. Oh, so this is how the Weimar government actually works. Now, going back to the proportional representation here, all right, when I talk about the proportional representation, what does it mean? Now, proportional representation is a fair system whereby the number of votes of a party gets equal number of seats in the Reichstag, in the parliament. Okay, so if I have, let's say, I have a number of votes, 60,000 votes, and then I will get one seat. All right, so every 60,000 votes, I will get one seat. That's proportional representation. So if a party gets 30% of votes in the election, then they will get 30% of seats in the Reichstag, which is very different from how the government works on number of seats that is being given to a ruling party in Singapore. It's very different. Okay, so proportional representation means if I get 30% of the votes from the public, then I will get 30% of the seats in the Reichstag. Now, this is to ensure that most views and interests are represented in the Reichstag, because then it's very fair. It's called proportional representation. It's extremely fair. Laws are usually approved by the members of the Reichstag before it is actually being passed, and the chancellor nor the president, they cannot push through a law to prevent an abuse of power. So the president can only make certain laws without going through the Reichstag under cases of emergency. That is under Article 48. Okay, so proportional representation in this manner ensures the members of the Reichstag are fairly chosen. Because if I am, no, the number of votes are given to a particular party, then the party will then receive X number of votes, proportionate to the number of the percentage of votes that has gotten. Okay, so this is another explanation or illustration of how it works, right, in the Weimar Republic or Weimar government. Now, just now I mentioned about the proportional representation. Yes, it is extremely fair. It's called proportional representation because it's very fair. Where the number of votes a party gets during an election, it will equate to the number of votes or seats in the Reichstag. So this is actually thought to be much, much fairer during the previous, in the past, right? But later on, you will see some flaws in this system. Proportional representation actually has a flaw because it will give, because it is so fair. That means big or small parties, regardless whether, so long as you won the seats, the percentage of seats, percentage of votes, you will get the percentage of seats. But this means, right, there will be a lot of different parties within the government, okay, in the parliament. Because of the proportional representation, okay, so there is also another problem, which is called coalition government. Now, coalition governments are actually formed when several political parties, they join forces, they cooperate, and it reduces the dominance of any one party. So assuming if there are some smaller parties that are being voted into the parliament, but they are too small to have their voice heard, they may join up with other political parties, right, in the Reichstag to form a bigger party or a bigger party. So these are called coalition governments where these parties, let's say, for example, I get 40% of the votes. I don't really have the majority so far. Majority means it's 50% and above. But let's say, assuming if I get only 40% of the votes and 40% of the seats. So in order to have a very clear majority, me as say political party A, I may want to join forces with two other smaller political parties, B and C, to make up to say 65%. Right? So this becomes a coalition government. So with 65%, I'm now able to have a majority vote, a majority say in the government. But within my so-called coalition government, it actually consists of the main government, the main party, plus two other smaller political parties. Now, as you know, political parties will always have their own agenda and their own push or their manifestos. So sometimes it can be very confusing, and it can also cause instability of a coalition. So instability of a coalition government, all right, is formed when there are a number of political parties that have very extremist ideas. So in this instance, in the Weimar government, there were a lot of governments that were so-called coalition governments, and it resulted in a lot of small little parties grouping up together to form a coalition. So it was very, very difficult to decide on important decisions because this coalition government could be made up of 4 or even 5 smaller parties grouped together, and each of these parties may have their own manifestos. And some of these parties actually had extremist ideas and they were unwilling to compromise. So after they have formed the coalition government, right, they can decide to not to collaborate or not to compromise. So this coalition government keeps breaking up because if there are arguments or disagreements, then they will keep breaking up. So when the coalition government is unstable, it causes the whole entire system to be also unstable. There's always frequent changes to the government. So common sense tells us that when there are frequent changes to the government, it actually causes fragmentation. So the Weimar government was weak because it was fragmented due to the presence of smaller competing parties that were willing to, and they were not willing to compromise. So it made it very difficult for the government to function effectively or to make decisions when the time needed. So as a result, because they were not able to come up with solutions, they were not able to function effectively, this gave the impression that the Weimar government was weak. All right, so people lost confidence in the Weimar government. They lost a lot of supporters during that time because they felt that the Weimar government was not doing what they were supposed to do, right, to help the people. Now, in the Weimar government, earlier on, I mentioned that there was an Article 48. Now, in the Article 48, it allows the president to make laws without having to go through the parliament or the Reichstag, right, in the event of an emergency. So this allows the president to dissolve both the houses, the upper house and the lower house, right, and rule by decree. That means he can rule how he wants for 6 months during an emergency. Now, the term that of the word emergency is not very clearly defined, and this was used as a loophole later on, and Hitler used this to his advantage, right? The term emergency to suppress the Communist Party. So later on, we will go into it a little bit more. But generally, all you need to know right now is the weakness of the Weimar government, which is part of it, which is the Article 48. So the Article 48 gave a loophole to Hitler and allowed him to take advantage, right? And to rise to power. Now, during this Article 48, it's extremely dangerous because civil liberties can be suspended because in times of emergency, right, in order for the so-called the ruling government, in order for the president, right, to make certain decisions, without having to go to the parliament, going to the Reichstag, because the Reichstag is made up of all these smaller political parties who can never ever compromise. So the president would then make certain decisions, and sometimes the freedoms, the people's freedoms would have to be suspended for that period of time. Now, for emergency cases, yes, this is a very drastic move, but it is also a very, very dangerous move because if the president does not revert after 6 months during an emergency, then what happens? So the people of the country will forever be under the control of the president, right? If there is no form of there's no form of regulations to say, okay, after 6 months, what's going to happen? So this is another flaw, a systemic flaw in the Weimar government. Now, another weakness of the Weimar government is that it was blamed for the signing of the Treaty of Versailles. So in Chapter 1, we know that the signing of the Treaty of Versailles was conducted by the Weimar Republic or the officers of the government. But what happened was the Weimar government did not tell the people that Germany will be invaded if World War One carried on. And the German people felt that it was the Weimar government who surrendered and so-called lost the war. But in actual fact, the Weimar Republic was forced to accept the terms in the treaty, correct? Because it was a forced form of it was a forced form of it was a diktat because they were forced to accept the terms of the treaty. And many of the people in Germany, they believed that this was a stab in their back because they felt that they were very betrayed. They felt that they were being betrayed by the Weimar government. But it's just that the Weimar government did not explain it very clearly to the German people that, they had to out of no choice. Okay, so the German people started uh, to associate the unfair terms with the Weimar Republic. So they put two and two together. Weimar Republic is responsible for the Treaty of Versailles, right? And for signing the Treaty of Versailles. So they thought that this Treaty of Versailles that was signed by the Weimar Republic was very, very unfair and uncalled for and disadvantaged Germany. But so what happened was there was a growing discontent among the people, and then they began to lose confidence in the Weimar government. Now, so much so that the Germans started to coin the term November criminals to be associated with the Weimar Republic. So a lot of the government officials, the Weimar, in the Weimar government, they were called or no, they were termed right, November criminals because they were they were responsible for the Treaty of Versailles, the signing of the Treaty of Versailles. Okay. Now, besides all the turmoil that the government was facing in Germany at that time, there were also a lot of threats to the Weimar Republic. The threats to the Weimar Republic were from the left and the right-wing extreme parties. Now, the left-wing groups in the Weimar, they wanted more equality in society. All right, that is the left wing. They also wanted to increase governmental involvement in social welfare, and also they want to increase labor unions. Whereas the right-wing groups, they were the nationalists. They supported militarism and also territorial expansion. Now, remember, during that time after World War One, there was two groups, correct? The pacifists and those who were pro-militarism. So the right-wing groups, they were pro-militarism. They felt that the only way to fight threats would be through military support, right? Through armed weapons and so on. So, but the left wing, they were more pacifist. They wanted social welfare. They wanted labor unions. They wanted more equality in society. So these are the two very extreme requirements of the left and right-wing parties. So as a result, it made the right wing, it made the Weimar Republic very weak because, right, on the left wing, you have the Spartakists, they are pushing away and they are pulling away from the right wing. And this resulted in the Weimar Republic right in the middle, and they were not able to do much. And they caused Weimar Republic to be very weak because they were not able to meet the people's needs. So as a result, they lost a lot of supporters, and Germans wanted an alternative government. They felt that the Weimar Republic has sufficiently failed them. Now, just a very quick, let me see. Okay, so that just a very quick information, all right, on the Spartacus uprising, which is the left wing. Now, the left wing are communists, and they wanted to model Germany into a communist nation. Very extreme. So they formed councils, they had rebel soldiers and sailors, and then they formed this rebellion. Okay, so the Spartakists formed a lot of these workers' council, and they created a lot of ruckus, riots, and so on. And they made President Ebert at that time. He made an agreement with the army, and said that and the Freikorps to put down this rebellion. So finally, the Spartacus rebellion was crushed, and it resulted in a death toll of around 2,000 people. But the Communist Party in Germany remained very powerful, very powerful anti-government force throughout the 1920s, right up until 1930s. Okay, so the communists, you can see the presence of communism already in Germany, and there was also there were quite a number of fervent supporters at that time. Now, coming to the right wing was, okay, so actually I have some videos on the cat putsch, but I'll wait for you all to come back, and then you can view the videos. Now, the cat putsch, okay, the cat putsch is actually by the right-wing groups, and they're actually from all segments of society, ranging from poor workers, wealthy landowners, all right? And in March 1920, they actually had a putsch. Putsch is actually a riot or a march, and they tried to overthrow the Weimar Republic. So Wolfgang Kapp is called the Cat Putsch or the Cat March because it was headed by this man by the name of Wolfgang, and he led 5,000 Freikorps to Berlin to try to overthrow the Weimar Republic. Now, at that time, President Ebert was on the brink of being overthrown, but he refused to engage the Freikorps. All right, so the putsch didn't really have a lot of support from the trade unions at that time, and there were actually quite a number of workers and civil servants, government officials that supported Ebert. So as a result, the march failed. They tried to overthrow the Weimar Republic, but it then failed. Okay, so that was in 1920. So the Weimar government, as it is, being pulled at both extremes and having its own internal problems at the same time, it started to get extremely weak, and the society was also split in these two extreme left and right wing groups, which threatened to overthrow the government. So at this time, the Weimar Republic is extremely shaky, it's very weak already. Now, coupled with that, there were also economic challenges at that time. Post-World War One Germany, they struggled with poverty, high unemployment, and also a fragile economy. Because what happened post-World War One, if you can refresh your memory, there were lots of territories, and then there was also war reparations, high war reparations that they had to pay. So this became an extreme economic burden, financial burden on Germany's economy. The government had to keep on paying the reparation payments, but at one point in time, because they had lost territories, resource-rich territories, um, they didn't have any means to pay. So as a result, they started printing more money. As you can see, printing more money does not really resolve the problem. Printing more money actually defeats the whole purpose, right? Because when you print more money, what's going to happen? It's going to cause high inflation. And at that time, the manufacturing industry was not doing well. At the same time, people did not have enough basic necessities. And at the same time, things were getting more and more expensive for the German people. So finally, in 1922, right, Germany was just out of any solutions. They failed to make that payment. And finally, France and Germany decided, okay, I'm going to invade Rome. And because you are not able to pay the reparations, I'm going to seize your mines and factories and railways. So this is the final straw for Germany, right? In this instance, where they seized all the mines and factories and railways in the Ruhr region, and the Weimar government had no other choice but again to is to print more money. So it's like a vicious economic cycle. So they started to print more and more money, and the value of the German currency started to drop, decrease. Prices were spiraling out of control. Hyperinflation also set in. So this is what happens, okay? So the German people were very, very hard hit. All their savings and pensions were wiped out virtually overnight. Now, how was it wiped out? Because the value of your money has decreased, so it's no longer valuable. I could have like 100,000 Rentenmarks, okay? But I overnight, because of the rising inflation, hyperinflation they call it. So all of a sudden, I did my money, my $100,000 is no longer valuable anymore. So it was just totally wiped out. So a lot of people had their savings and pensions totally wiped out. And then finally, what happened was there was this new chancellor. So it's no longer the old chancellor. So there's a new chancellor by the name of Gustav Stresemann. He decided, okay, I'm going to introduce the Rentenmark to stabilize the currency, because the hyperinflation is causing the prices and the to spiral out of control. And if this continues, right, they would basically hit rock bottom. So what he did was, Gustav Stresemann, what he did was he started to negotiate for the repayment of the war reparations. Right? So there were two plans. It's called the Dawes Plan in 1924 and the Young Plan in 1927. So these are payment structures that he managed to negotiate. It's like installments, okay? It's like a loan installment, so that Germany would then be able to pay in a reasonable manner. So during this period, 1923 to 1929, despite all the doom and gloom, it was known as the golden age of the Weimar, because the economy recovered. So what happened was that under the Dawes Plan and the Young Plan, there was injection of money into the German economy, and it also helped the German manufacturing companies and factories, right, to restart in order to generate, to kickstart the economy. And during this time, this very, very brief period from 1923 to 1929, it was called the Golden Age of the Weimar, because the economy recovered, and also for a very short period of time, democracy was also established. So during this time, the Weimar government had, well, some peace, all right? But above all, Germany suffered a lot of humiliation and also hyperinflation in the early 20s. Like in some of my videos that I will show you, you will see how these German people were, they were so cold in the heat of, in the height of winter. It was extremely cold. They didn't have enough energy. They didn't have enough heat. So they started to burn currency, the money, in order to heat up the whole entire house. So they use money, burn it, so that they can get some heat in the house. So it was a very, very tough times. right, during that period. So just very quickly, let's have a quick glance of what actually happened from 1919 to 1929 and some of the key events at that time. 1919 was the World War One ended, right? So that's what we did in the previous chapter. And January 1919, there was also the Spartacus Revolt, right? The Communist Revolt. Then right after that, the Treaty of Versailles was signed, June 1919. And very quickly, within about 4 years, hyperinflation already started to set in, right? During the period 1919 to 1923, there was a lot of turmoil in the Weimar Republic, right, where hyperinflation was at its height, okay? And November 1923, that was the Munich Putsch. And after the Munich Putsch, there was the Dawes and the Young Plan that was established, and it had a period a very quick period, a short period of stability at that time. Okay, there was a very short period of stability called the Golden Age. So let me introduce to you to this very powerful man. I'm sure he is not a stranger to a lot of you. So in this chapter, we will be looking at how Hitler actually rose to power in the early years. So there are three main areas that we will be looking at. We will be looking at the appeal of Hitler and the Nazi Party. We will look at the impact of the Great Depression, and finally, when Hitler becomes the Chancellor. So this is the process of how Hitler rose to power. So first and foremost, Hitler was actually born in a very small town at the border of Austria and Germany. All right, and it was located about 65 miles east of Munich, and he was actually a baptized Catholic. Right? So it's just right in the border of Austria and Germany here, right? So what I've mentioned to you in the previous chapter was Austria and Germany actually share a very close kinship, right? They speak the same language. And that was the reason why Austria and Germany were extremely good relations right from the start. Okay, in 1898, right, Hitler was still a very young boy. They moved up to the capital of in Upper Austria, Linz, and originally Hitler wanted to have a career in the arts. Right? So he's a very artistic person. His goal, his aim was actually to become an artist, but he entered the war. He joined the army. Um, because his father wanted him to join the army. He didn't want to, but he was forced into it. So he did. He actually joined the civil service. So after his father's death, he's extremely close to his mother, and his mother permitted him, right, to pursue his dream of becoming an artist. So he went to Vienna. Hitler went to Vienna. He also took the entrance exams in Vienna to join the Vienna Academy of Fine Arts, but he failed. All right, because at that time they felt that his drawings were not good enough to enter the Academy of Arts. So he tried many times to become an artist. He originally did a lot of landscape drawing, a lot of his drawings were depictions of his experience as a soldier prior to that. So this is one of the pictures or drawings that he did, and depicting the horrors of World War One. And much later, these are some of his sketches of buildings in Germany. So I would say that it's actually quite interesting, quite good works of art. But unfortunately, it was not good enough to enter Vienna Academy of Arts. So at that time when he was in Vienna, he was a struggling artist. He didn't want to work because he was trying his best to become an artist. And he was very, very influenced in Vienna at that time by two political movements, one of which was actually the German racist nationalism, which was propagated by this politician called Georg Van Schronerer. And the second influence was from Karl Lueger, who was the mayor at that time. So Lueger was still in power when Hitler was in Vienna, and Lueger was the one who promoted anti-Semitism. Now, anti-Semitism that was more practical and organization than ideological. So it was a practical form of anti-Semitism. Nevertheless, it reinforced that idea of anti-Semitism or anti-Jewish stereotypes in young Hitler at that time, right? Casting Jews as the enemies and German middle and lower middle class. So for I'm not sure whether you have done this in Sec 2 when you did literature, Merchant of Venice. All right, and there was a lot of anti-Semitism um, ideas. Okay, so they didn't like the Jews. Same Germans, they don't like the Jews. They were trying to find a scapegoat, and of course, the Jewish community lah, right, were the scapegoats. Okay, so unlike Schroner, who was more comfortable with the elitist nationalism of the student fraternities, Luca was very comfortable with big city crowds, and he knew how to channel their protests in order to gain political attention. So it was Hitler who drew his ideology from both Luger and also Schroner, right, George? So this is where, I think, let me see where he is. Okay, there you go. This is him. Okay. All right. So anti-Semitism, just to recap, it's hostility, prejudice towards the Jews. Okay. Now, just a very quick introduction to Anton Drexler. Okay, the DAP. This is before the Nazi Party was formed. So DAP was formed in 1919 by this man called Anton Drexler, made up of ex-soldiers and also unemployed Germans. So what they did was basically they meet up in beer halls. There was no proper, it was actually not a political party. It was just like a gathering, all right, a group of people. They would meet in beer halls. Beer halls are pubs, all right, so we know them as pubs now, but they were called beer halls in Munich. There was no official manifesto, there was no ideology. Now, a manifesto or ideology means that for every political party, there's bound to be a message or something, a mission that they would abide by. But DAP is just not. There was no manifesto. There was no ideology. It was just a bunch of people who had no like-minded people who just grouped together to talk, okay, or to rant, right, in the beer pubs after they've gotten drunk. So the main discussion of this DAP was centered around German nationalism, Treaty of Versailles, the hatred towards the Treaty of Versailles, resentment towards it, resentment towards the communist threats, and also the problem of the Jews. So these were the same things that Hitler was also quite open to, right? Now, Hitler was became attracted to Drexler's political beliefs because they seemed to be aligned. All right. So in 1919, Drexler convinced Hitler, leave the army and come and join me as a member of the DAP. So at that time, Hitler uh, he was a speaker. He was not entirely a very great speaker, but he proved to have potential, in public speaking. So Drexler appointed Hitler to be the party's head of propaganda. And that was when, at the age of 31, he joined DAP and to form a strong political movement. But there were problems. There were problems with the DAP right from the start. So let's look at some of the problems. Okay, these are foundational information or background information that is important for you to know. Okay, so problems of the DAP is that there is no lack of proper ideology. There's no manifesto, right? So if there is no manifesto, there's no proper ideology. So it's actually very difficult to reach out to the masses if you do not have a strong mission or statement. So there were only a few members, and it only appealed to German workers. It did not appeal to every layer of society in Germany. It only appealed to the low-level workers. And there's not enough support. There was no structure. There was also no clear leadership. And there was also no official party office either. So they basically, met up in the beer halls and just rant. So there was a lot of structural problems at the time, and Hitler set out to correct these flaws. So what he did was, in December 1919, after he had joined the DAP, not long after, he founded the Nazi Party. Now, the Nazi Party actually stands for National Socialist German Workers' Party. Now, the Nazi Party or the National Socialist German Workers' Party, they promote German pride. anti-Semitism, dissatisfaction with the Treaty of Versailles, and also the dissatisfaction with the Paris Peace settlement that ended World War One. So these were the common resentment that the people of Germany actually felt. Right, same things. So they begin to have commonality. So any political party where they have certain, right, they share certain hatred towards something, right? They are bound to have some common ground. So by 1921, Hitler became the leader of the Nazi party. Just rewind just a little bit more. Okay, January 1919 first. So this is a video that I need to show you, but I can't show you now. Okay, or else you will not be able to see this recording. But when you come back to class, we will view all these videos I have here for you, right? Now, now right from the start, what happened was, okay, now Adolf Hitler, the German army actually employed Hitler as an educator and also confidential informant. So as a confidential informant, he would provide information, attended beer hall meetings of the German Workers' Party. So, of course, for Hitler's background, when he was in Vienna, he was in the battlefield as a soldier. These were very, very important stages, right, that set the path for Hitler's development, and of course, his comprehensive ideology of what Germany should be like. Okay, so his service in the army shaped his commitment to anti-Semitism. Right. And then when he was in Vienna as a struggling artist, he saw a lot of these rich people, rich landowners, rich Jews. They were enjoying themselves. And while the rest of Germany was suffering, they were still, just right after World War One, and a lot of people were still suffering. Prices were spiraling. But in Vienna, he saw a lot of these rich landowners, rich business capitalists. They were still enjoying themselves, having parties, and he resented it. Okay, because he felt that Germany is not the rest of Germany is suffering, and yet there's this group of people enjoying themselves. All right, so he felt that it was actually very unfair. So that cemented his hatred and commitment to anti-Semitism. All right. Now, on September 16, 1919, Hitler issued his first written comment on the so-called Jewish question. Now, he defined the Jews as a race and not a religious community. All right, and he characterized these people, the Jewish presence, as a race tuberculosis of the peoples. All right, it's like a disease, right, and it started to create discriminatory, ideas against the Jews. This is a very important part here. And for those, I've mentioned this before, if you do have Netflix, do watch Hitler's Circle of Evil. I always encourage my students to do that because every chapter looks closely at important characters and the important people that helped or supported in one way or another, contributed to Hitler's rise to power. Right, just a very quick introduction to some of the people that you should be aware of, some of the characters. Rudolf Hess is the deputy Führer. He's a very low-key man. No, he not much of is said about him, or there's not really that much. The only thing visible that he did was in 1941 he flew to Scotland in an attempt to negotiate Britain to exit World War II. That's for later thing. And he's only famous for that incident, that event. But other than that, he's very low-key, but he is the Führer's deputy. So next, another very important person is Joseph Goebbels. And I want you to remember his face. He's a very small man, small in stature, but of course he is very big in terms of his ideas. He's in charge of the propaganda activities. Be it any form of media is all under Joseph Goebbels. He's known as the Minister of Propaganda. Next, we have Heinrich Himmler. He's best known for his little mustache and his round-rimmed glasses. All right, so he is actually in charge of the SS. All right, so the secret police. And he is also in charge of the final solution, which is the Holocaust, deporting Jews to the concentration camps and, well, executing the Jews. Okay, so he's in charge of that. Next, we have Hermann Goering. Hermann Goering is the leader of Luftwaffe and also the Gestapo. He was a longtime friend of Hitler, and he was tasked in the early years to form the German Air Force, the Luftwaffe, and he was supposed to set up the Luftwaffe within 4 years. Okay, so Hermann Goering is best known, some caricatures that you see in political cartoons in your SBQ practice papers, you will see him as a very big sized man. He likes to wear his army uniform, very ostentatious. He likes to wear all his medals, all right, vain. Okay, he's known to be vain. He likes to wear all his medals and show off his importance. All right, so each of these characters actually have a very unique trait. All right. Now, coming to Ernst Röhm. Ernst Röhm is also another very important character that you should know. He's the leader of the SA, the Brown Shirts. He's head of the paramilitary called the Brown Shirts, and they who act as bodyguards to Hitler during his speeches. So when Hitler does his speeches in beer halls, everywhere he goes, then you have the SA's company. Now, the SAs are called the brown shirts because a long time ago, when they first started, all right, when they first started to have this paramilitary, when he was just coming up with the SA, they didn't have any proper uniform. So what they did was they found old postal workers' uniforms and they wore these uniforms, right? So these were the uniforms that they wore. Okay. Then next you have Robert Ley. Robert Ley is the leader of the German Labour Front. So later on you will see that he was in charge of the in terms of the trade unions. They banned the trade unions, but later on they came up with something else besides the trade unions. Now I will explain to you a little bit later why trade unions were banned at that time, you know, during the height of Hitler, and they introduced some other things like, you know, beauty of labor. Later on, I will explain that to you. Now, next we have Albert Speers. He's the Minister of Armaments and War Production at that time, Albert Speers. And finally, we have Eva Braun, Hitler's longtime companion or girlfriend. But they only married for a day before they both committed suicide. So she was loyal to Hitler right to the very end. So let's see, how did Hitler rise to power? Okay, I wish I had time to like show you this video. Like I said, right? See all these videos, I can't show you yet because the recording, you will not be able to see it later on if I were to show you the videos. Okay. At a glance, let's very quickly look at what actually happened. 1929, a very crucial 4 years, 4 crucial years prior to Hitler's ascent to power. So first of all, 1929, that was a Wall Street crash, and leading to Brüning being appointed as the chancellor. And then Franz von Papen also became the chancellor in 1932. Very quick, there was a change in terms of the chancellor very quick in those years. Very fractured or difficult times during that time. And then Hitler becomes chancellor, and it started to become extremely fast. The process became very fast when Nazi rose to power. But we just rewind back to 1929. So 1929 was the year where Wall Street crashed. When the Wall Street crashed, it was due to the stock market in America. So in the stock markets in America, when it failed, suddenly the stock market bubble burst. It caused a domino effect, so to speak. And the American companies and banks, they started to recall their loans. And this also included recalling of loans from Germany. And, a lot of factories had to also stop, right, because of their no, they didn't, the funding was actually cut, right, by the Americans. So at that time, Brüning was appointed to be the chancellor. And then after that, Franz von Papen, and it's actually Franz von Papen who tried to convince to convince the president, hey, I think Hitler would be also a good, who would also be a good choice, right, to be nominated as a chancellor at that time. Okay. Very quickly, we'll look at the Nazi Party, the appeal of the Nazi Party. So what made the Nazi Party so popular at that time? It's actually due to Hitler's 25-point program. All right, we'll look at the 25-point program that he came up with. Now, at that time, the Hitler's 25-point program, right? He was in favor of German blood in Germany, the purity of the German blood. Jews and all the other undesirables, they would then lose their citizenship. So that is actually part of the 25-point program because they, anti-Semitism, right? They believed in the superiority of the Aryan race, and he felt that all these, the Jews and all the undesirables, they are actually the burden of the society. So when he published the 25-point program in February 1920, there were some key important points that was in his 25-point. I mean, you don't have to remember all the 25 points, but you need to only just remember uh, the key aspects of the 25-point program. First of all, to abolish the Treaty of Versailles. So that was the first thing that he was going to put up. So the 25-point program, right, seems to be like a manifesto, all right, a political ideology and a mission that he was out to set. And he was going to abolish the Treaty of Versailles. He was going to have Anschluss, a union of Germany and Austria, because Germany and Austria, they are, they are close neighbors. They have a lot of history together. So they wanted to have, not to join Germany and Austria, which was prohibited under the Paris Peace Conference. There was the prohibition of Germany and Austria. They were not allowed to form any form of unity. So they're going to have a union. They want to have Germany and Austria to form a larger union. And they only wanted the true Germans to live in Germany, right? So all the undesirables, the Jews especially, they are excluded. All right. They're going to nationalize large businesses and industries, right? Nationalize means it will come under the purview of the government. So the government will control. So when the government controls, it means it will get rid of the rich landowners and the rich industrialists. Okay. So this is trying to make it fair for the general public. And he will also want to increase pensions, establish a very strong central government in Germany. So it's no longer a fractured government. He wants to have a central government that will have a lot of control, all right, so that a majority control, so that any form of decisions can be made quickly for the benefit of the people. So these are the key things inside his 25-point program. So this idea of this ideology, right, the 25-point program formed the Nazi ideology, and it made the Nazis very popular among the normal Germans because it offered some form of national unity, some form of prosperity. They promised prosperity because with the nationalization of large businesses, they're going to do away with all that, the fat layer of landowners and business capitalists. And people would have employment, people would have fair prosperity, or prosperity will be shared equally among everybody, and they were going to get rid of what they call the November criminals. Can you remember who are the November criminals? The Weimar government. All right. So the key Nazi Party beliefs are these, all right? He believed very strongly about one strong Germany. He also, he was also pushing very much for self-sufficiency, which is called autarky in German. Autarky means self-sufficiency. That means they are able to survive on their own. They do not have to rely on another country. Okay, and they also wanted to have social and ethnic cleansing. That means to get rid of the Jews in Germany. And Lebensraum is to have unity with Austria. So when they have Anschluss with Austria, it means that their living spaces will increase. So because Lebensraum came about because a lot of territories in Germany was taken away from them during World War One. After World War One, right? After the PPC and the Treaty of Versailles, a lot of territories were taken away, and this was what Hitler wanted to get back. He wanted to get back these territories which rightfully belonged to him, right? And to also expand living spaces for people of Germany. Okay. So these were the key things that he was looking at, right? Looking for making sure that Germany becomes economically self-sufficient. And this resonated with a lot of the German workers, all right? And they wanted to have one single leader to have complete power because the previous government, the Weimar government, was very fragmented. There was no clear decision making. They were pulled in all directions. And this was also one of the reasons that contributed to the fall of Germany. So if you have one single leader with complete power, right, rather than a democracy, it pushes the society and the country forward. But you see, Germany has gone through so much turmoil. They felt that they have nothing to lose. They have already tried it with a very democratic, fair representation of the democratic government with the Weimar, but it didn't work. All right, they suffered greatly. So why not try something else? So and of course, not the Hitler and the Nazi Party, he promised the people to abolish the Treaty of Versailles that had caused such humiliation and resentfulness among the German people. So these were all the things that the Nazi Party was pushing for, and it was extremely attractive to a lot of the German people. So this was what attracted the German people. They wanted to have some form of national unity. They wanted to have regain prosperity. And also, most importantly, for the working class, they wanted employment. They wanted to be employed. They wanted to have some form of normalcy in their lives. So the 25-point program is important, all right? The 25-point program was one that set the scene, the foundations of the appeal of the Nazi Party. Why did people appeal to it? Because it spoke directly to the hearts of the people. They wanted, I want this, right? I want the Treaty of Versailles to be abolished, all right? Hold on for a second. And right, so next, we're going to see how Hitler takes control of the Nazi Party. Now, in 1921, Hitler was already a very dominant figure in the Nazi Party because he already overthrew Anton Drexler. Anton Drexler discovered Hitler in 1919. All right, and then by 1921, he was already overthrown. Okay, and of course, Hitler, he appointed his very close allies, such as Hermann Goering, because he knew Hermann Goering during in the army. And he appointed Hermann Goering to be in charge of the brown shirts, which were mostly ex-soldiers who joined the Nazi Party after World War One. So the SA is actually an informal group. All right, the brown shirts are informal group. They were likened to be thugs, right? They provided security. It's like gangsters, lah. They have no real authority, but they were associated like thugs. And Hitler provided the SAs with the uniforms from the defunct postal service, like what I mentioned to you earlier, right? But the SAs are very loyal to Hitler. Okay, they are very, very loyal to Hitler, and they will protect Hitler from his rivals, especially when he went for talks, in the beer halls. So by November 1923, the SA started to grow, and it started to grow up to 50,000 members at that time. And now you get to see a lot of people wanting to hear Hitler speak to the crowd. So Hitler would speak in Nazi meetings, on the streets, in the beer halls. And of course, the general public, the German public were very, very impressed by the commitment of Hitler because he, all the things that he wanted to do. And that was exactly what the German people wanted. All right. He basically gave what the German people wanted of him. Okay. Now, membership and growth of the German Workers' Party, Nazi Party, also started to increase. Right, from 1920, there was only very few, all right, very, very, very few members, only about 22,000 members at that time, Nazi Party. Okay, and By the time 1923, which is 3 years later, it already grew to 20,000 lah. Okay, 1923. Okay, so this is the growth in terms of membership in the Nazi Party. But this is still not enough, right? So he tried to use his leadership role in the Nazi Party to build a reputation to become a very committed speaker. And he would go on and on all over Germany, to win the hearts of the public because of their shared hatred towards the Weimar Republic. So finally, he decided, why not? I want to overthrow the Weimar government. So now I think I have enough supporters and I'm able to try to overthrow the government. So in November 1923, what happened was Hitler, right, together with Ludendorff, he decided to take power into their own hands, all right, to try to overthrow the unpopular Weimar Republic. So on that evening, Hitler and his followers, they marched, locked into arms into Munich. And of course, he had his good friends, Hermann Goering, right? And they all marched like towards the Weimar, all right? And they wanted to overthrow the government. So at that time, there was armed police, they were stopped, and a fight broke out. Now, take note, at that time, Hitler was actually standing in front, right? They were marching towards, in Munich, they were marching towards the government. And he was right in front, right? Actually, he was shot at, but he must have long life. He must be a cat in his previous life. That despite the fact that the armed police was at close range and shot at close range, right? He escaped unscathed. All right. Unscathed. He was but the Weimar Republic banned the Nazi Party. So after that, the failure of the Munich Putsch, right, was quite humiliating. But Hitler didn't find this failure as humiliating. He did not even see this as a failure at all. Okay. So at the trial, Hitler, he tried to impress the judges and he was successful. And he was trying to impress the judges about what he wanted to do, what was his ideology, and why he made that, why he wanted to do that. So he was sent to jail. Okay, after the Munich Putsch, he tried to overthrow the government, right? So because of his ideologies, he meant well, but he was put to jail. And during this time, all right, this is the time when he came up with the Mein Kampf. All right, so during this time, there was the Munich Putsch, and it failed. Right? They were sent to prison, right? But Hitler didn't see this as a failure at all. In actual fact, he felt right that this was an opportunity for him to learn. So what actually caused Hitler to attempt the Munich Putsch in 1923? At that time, right? He thought at that time he had like 55,000 members. He thought, wow, stronger than ever already, right? From 2,000 members in 1920 to 1923, 3 years, just 3 years, and they have 55,000 members. They thought, oh, I have all the support, right? I'm going to, I'm going to overthrow the Weimar Republic because we're in hyperinflation, right? But thinking that he would be helped by the nationalist politicians in Bavaria. In actual fact, the national politicians, right, basically left him at the lurch and said, "Hey, sorry, I'm not going to do this," right? So he was also trying to copy the Italian leader by the name of Mussolini. Okay, because Mussolini, he's a fascist leader, right? He came into power in Italy by marching on Rome and overthrowing the government. Also thought that, oh, this was what Mussolini did, and he was successful. So I'm gonna try, the putsch, just as how Mussolini did. But of course, he failed big time. So the Nazi Party was banned. Hitler was prevented from speaking in public until 1927. He was sentenced to 5 years in prison. So during this period of time when he was in prison was a very, very important time where he wrote the book Mein Kampf, which is a propaganda book setting out cementing the Nazi beliefs. So millions of Germans read it, and they were, they were totally in agreement to what Hitler wrote. Okay, so actually, the judge was also lenient with the sentence. All right, so Hitler only served very, very little time. All right, and this time when he wrote the Mein Kampf and also the experiences of the Munich Putsch, he came to this realization. He came to this realization that he will never be able to come into power by revolting, by having a revolution, by just forcing the government into his control. That will never happen. He will never ever get that. The only way he can do it is through democratic means. So he decided to reorganize the Nazi Party again and to enable him to take part in elections. And this is the only way he felt that he was going to take over Germany. All right. So Munich Putsch is actually the turning point. So the Munich Putsch as an event. All right. So let's see, take note of all the things that we see here. Okay. Hyperinflation. Okay. So stemming from a strong Nazi party. All right. 55,000 people already. Then coupled with the fact there was also inflation. And after that, the strike was called off. Potentially uncontrollable SAs. Then, of course, the Mussolini success, right, led to Hitler thinking that the Munich Putsch would be an equal success as well. But then not knowing that the Bavarian politicians, right, decided to turn their backs on Hitler. So what happened was his Nazi party was banned. He was imprisoned. During his prison time, he wrote Mein Kampf. And when he completed his prison term, he decided, I'm going to reorganize the Nazi party again. All right. So he decided to use the failed putsch to his advantage, right? To overturn, because he had this very strong commitment and strong desire to overturn the unfair Treaty of Versailles, to abolish the Treaty of Versailles, and to take over the Weimar government. So this is what he did to rebuild the Nazi party. All right. So the first thing he did was his Mein Kampf. He penned his political manifesto into his book called Mein Kampf. This involves his idea of German loyalty, racial purity of the Aryans. So racial purity of the Aryans will also mean getting rid of the Jews. All right, his anti-Semitism and the state control of the economy. That means the central power controlling, right, the country and the economy. So these were the three key things that he spelled out in the Mein Kampf. And this was his idea that war and struggle was actually essential, right, in the development of the healthy Aryan. He felt that this was uh, a process that he had to take, right? A process of war, of struggle in order to emerge. So it's like a butterfly, right, from a caterpillar, goes through lava, and then emerge as a very beautiful butterfly. And that was he believed in. He also believed in Lebensraum, living spaces for the German people, because he lost territories during the TOV, and he wanted to also, now he become very ambitious, because not only do I want back my territories that I've lost, I also want to expand into Eastern Europe. Okay, so Mein Kampf was also emphasized the total loyalty towards the Führer. It's very important. Now, only one and only leader. And in order to do so, he created a new protection squad called the SS. Right, so the SS and the brown shirts are two different things. So the SS, they wear black uniforms, right? Very, very smart black uniforms. And he appointed Heinrich Himmler as the leader. So the SS was set up as Hitler's elite personal bodyguards. Now let's look at the structure of the Nazi party. Now, so we have Hitler right at the top as the leader. He would have his trusted SS, right, led by Himmler. He would have his leadership corps. Then comes the SAs, the brown shirts, then party members, and finally the Hitler Youth. So it's like a triangle, right? Where party members, SAs, the Hitler Youth members, They form the bulk and the basis and foundation, all right, for, for the Nazi Party. As you can see, the Hitler Youth, they're right at the bottom, the foundational bottom layer of the pyramid. And as they grow older, then they will then progress to become a full-fledged party member. All right. Now, when he rebuilt the Nazi Party, it was all about winning support. He needed support for the SS. He was an extremely charismatic speaker, very, very powerful oratorical skills. And these were skills that he was endowed with. And he also, and of course, he also practiced, okay, he put them into practice. He had to train for it. Now, he's known, a very well-known demagogue who's a master at gauging the mood of the audience, and he would be able to rile up the entire audience when he delivered his speeches. Okay, so he would deliver speeches on a daily basis in beer halls, in large venues, and the people were totally intoxicated, right, with his message because he's extremely animated. They're very animated. He would use his hands. He does a lot of gestures, very over-the-top gestures. And the people, the audience, were very much swayed by his message, right? They had never seen such a speaker like that before. So they were totally enamored by his message. And he seemed to know the concerns of the people. Right? He knows what the German people hated. They hated the November criminals, right? They hated the Treaty of Versailles. So he basically knew exactly what the people wanted, the German people, majority of the German people wanted, right? So he was able to win over a lot of the working class, all right, because they hated the Jews, they hated the November criminals, they have something in common. And he was also able to win over a lot of the rich industrialists. Now, at that time, right, there was also the communists, right? So communism in 1920s, 1930s in Germany was still very, very popular. So the other large political party that the Nazi Party had to contend with was the communists, right? So he didn't want the communists to win. So what did he do? He began to speak to the many of the rich industrialists and say, hey, if the communists were to take over, that means they were going to take over all your businesses, all right, all your wealth, because communism ideology is that everybody's going to be equal. So what's going to happen? They're going to take away all your factories, take away all your land, take away all your businesses and all your money, and then spread it equally. Is that what you want? So the rich industrialists and the business owners got scared. Of course, they want to keep their wealth to themselves, right? So that was right. Between the devil and the deep blue sea, who do they choose? Of course, they chose Hitler. Of course, they chose the Nazi Party. And of course, these rich industrialists, okay, after when Hitler explained that to them, they were like, wow, very, very scared of the communists, isn't it? So because of that, they decided, okay, you contribute money to the Nazi Party, right? Because a political party needs funding. So you contribute to the Nazi Party, and then it will allow the Nazi Party to have sufficient financial resources to continue this political agenda. We're going to try to win this government, because once we win this government, we can keep the communists at bay. All right, so that was what the rich industrialists and the important business owners wanted. So that was how the Nazi Party was able to get money for their many, many political campaigns. Now, he also created a network. So he's not going to rely on people in Munich or in Berlin itself. He's going to go all out, network to all the rural areas. So he had to appoint party members. All right. So he created this network of local Nazi parties all throughout Germany. And these candidates, right, will stand election in the Reichstag. So it's like spreading out, like grassroots, spreading out to the rural areas of Germany. All right. So by 1929, the numbers in the Nazi Party started to grow from 55,000 in 1923 to up to more than 100,000 members. So it made Nazi Party one of the most popular political parties in Germany. Now, take note, 1929 doesn't mean that he's already successful. No, he was not successful yet. Okay. Now, so there were also challenges. He's not successful yet. 1929 still had a lot of problems that he had to face. So some of the problems, right, that he had to face was the challenge of winning enough seats in the Reichstag, because A lot of the industrialists, they supported social democrats or sometimes the communists. So during this time, as you can see from the table here, they did not have enough numbers. So the number of seats that was won by the Nazis in 1924, May 1924 was 32, but it dropped, it continued to drop to 14, dropped to 12. It was worse. All right, so it actually went down in terms of the number of seats. So there were a lot of supporters, but there were not enough seats. So that was the great challenge of the Nazi Party. So what happened was Hitler decided, okay, I'm going to go all out to support and get the support of the farming communities. All right. So in the farming communities in the rural areas, he started to try to speak to these farmers, and he even tried to convince them that the Weimar Republic did not look after their interests, praise these farmers as true Aryan Germans, right, and to win their support. So he was successful in this regard. The Nazi Party, they were not popular during the golden age. All right, 1924 to 1929. Now, during this time, remember earlier on, I said that 1924 to 1929, this is the time, a very short period of time where the Weimar government was able to stabilize the country, all right? And also the economy started to pick up. There was employment. People were employed. People were enjoying some form of economic success. And it was only for a very short period of time until 1929 when the stock market bubble burst in America. Now, during that time when there were a lot of job opportunities, all right, the Weimar Republic, they also provided a lot of generous welfare. So this is the challenge to the Nazi Party because it's right smack in the middle of 1924 to 1929. And this was the time where the Nazi Party was also trying to build up its numbers. Okay, so by 1928, they just couldn't, they were struggling to get support. Okay, they were struggling to get support because the Weimar Republic was doing well. All right. So as you can see, right, countries or governments that come into power, they are able to be successful, in getting into power is because when there is a form of difficulty. Right? But if the country is doing well, it's going to be harder for any opposition or a new party to even take over. Oops. Secondly, we're going to look at the impact of the Great Depression. So what happened? 1929 came along. There was what we call the Great Depression, right? Economic instability. It led to unemployment. It led to no democracy. It led to rise of communism, rise of Nazis. So during the good times, during times of economic success and economic progress, 1924 to 1929, everything was good. Nazi Party had a big challenge of trying to get supporters and trying to win seats. They were not able to do so. But then there was a turnaround. The sudden turnaround was actually this event called the Great Depression. So because of the Great Depression, it resulted in a lot of companies closing down. American banks were recalling their loans, and economic stability that Germany experienced came to an end. All right, because of the global economic depression that was brought about by the US stock market, a stock exchange crash. It's called the Wall Street crash. And the loans that Gustav Stresemann was able to negotiate under the Dawes Plan was being threatened. Okay, the loans funded by the German funding the German industry and to help the war reparations, they stopped. Okay, so when all these loans into the German industry stopped, it collapsed and it caused the German economy to come to a standstill. So as you know, US started call in loans. German industry started to lose money because they depended on the money that was given by the American banks. So when the companies were not doing well, they had to lay off the workers, they had to retrench workers, which means that as a worker, I don't have a job anymore. I will spend less. When I spend less, prices drop, demand falls. Industry again loses a lot more money. So it is a spiraling effect that actually occurs, leading to what we call a Great Depression. All right, so there was this chain of events. All right, so there was this huge chain of events as a result of the Wall Street crash. This chain of events ended in the destruction of the German democracy. So with the government unable to win a majority in the Reichstag, the laws could only be passed by the presidential decree. Remember Article 48. So as a result, not enough action was taken to tackle the economic and social consequences of the Great Depression, because the Great Depression was so bad, right? They were not able to make a comeback. So this was a time when the Germans looked at the Weimar Republic and say, hey, again, you are the problem, right? You're not able to respond in time. Okay, so the Nazis at this time, they benefited because, all right, the turnaround of the events, the Great Depression gave the Nazi Party an opportunity to shine again. All right. And in January 1933, Hitler was finally appointed chancellor by the President Hindenburg. Okay, President Hindenburg. And the chain of events that occurred next, so when Hitler was appointed as a chancellor, he quickly started to dismantle the German democracy. All right, so he forced the passing of an act called the Enabling Act through the Reichstag, which gave him unlimited power for 4 years. Right? And then he decided to eliminate all his sources of opposition and all other political parties, trade unions, and even Ernst Röhm, the leader of the SA, okay, at that time. Now, coming back to the impact of the German depression, the depression on Germany. So there's this video later on I'll show you. And the German economy resulted in a lot of Germans losing jobs. 40% of the workforce was unemployed. Okay, industrial workers, farmers, middle class, they all lost their jobs, and even small businesses and shops, they suffered tremendously. Now, as you can see, from 1929 to 1932, the average German income, it fell by about 40%. Right? And a lot of Germans were left homeless because they were not able to pay for their rentals or their mortgage. Right? Mortgage is like a loan. And the slums begin to appear in most of the cities because they had nowhere to go. They were evicted from their homes, nowhere to go, and therefore they had to live on the streets. Now, as a result of this economic downturn, Hitler's message was very clear. He would say, I'm going to provide jobs, food for the people. All right. So I'm going to turn this economy around, and I'm going to provide jobs, because when you provide jobs, then there will be food. Then I will be able to buy food. The people would be able to afford to buy food, right? So the many people, they started to trust and support the Nazi Party because they felt that the Weimar government was not able to resolve the problems again, and they had they lost their faith in the Weimar government. They were very attracted to Hitler's promise now of jobs and money and stability and so on. Democracy also came to an end. There was a failure of democracy. Now, during the, as we all know, the Weimar government is actually made up of coalition, right? The coalition government led by the Social Democrats. So during this time when the Great Depression actually occurred, so this Great Depression actually rejected the coalition partners, or they started to reject the Social Democrats' proposal to increase welfare for the unemployed, to ease their burden. Because what happened is that during the Great Depression, there were a lot of people who were suffering. So the Social Democrats say, hey, no, let's increase welfare for these people because they don't have any money. So we're going to help them. All right. But the coalition partners refuse. So if the coalition partners refuse, what's going to happen to the people? They will continue to suffer. And this resulted in the collapse of the coalition government in 1920, resulting in the President Hindenburg invoking Article 48. All right, he invoked Article 48 to appoint a new chancellor called Henrik Brüning. This is Brüning. Now, at this time, Brunei, he actually tried lah. He tried his best. He wanted to uh, help save the economy, the German economy. He wanted to cut welfare expenditure, wages of the government employees lah, because the government is already suffering, the country is already suffering. So what else can we cut back? Huh? So he said, I'm going to cut back on welfare expenditure. I'm also going to cut back on wages of the government officers. So this was considered to be a very, very harsh measure, and it was rejected by the parliament. They felt like, nope, I'm not going to agree to this. So this is what happens in a very fragmented government. A fragmented government means that there is no clear majority. Right? Unlike Singapore, where we have a very clear majority, right? Whatever the government says in parliament, yes, because they have the majority number of seats, therefore naturally, all right, the number of people who agree to the government's decisions and policies would be expedited. But unfortunately, in the Weimar government, it was not as such. So unfortunately, what happened was Hindenburg, again, he used Article 48 to bypass the Reichstag and to give him powers to choose a new chancellor and pass new laws, because this Bruning fella, right, he's not working. All right, he's not he's not getting the support. All right, he's not doing what he's meant to do lah. Okay, so it was rejected by the Reichstag. Okay, so so President Hindenburg said, okay lah, this fella is not the right one. I'm going to choose another chancellor. So they chose another chancellor. Okay, at this time they chose Franz von Papen. Right, Franz von Papen. Now, during this period where there was the Great Depression, now you can see here the picture. You know, what are they doing with the money? They're actually burning it so that they can get heat, fuel, right? There was no more fuel left. So they burn currency, money, dollar notes in order to get fuel. So a lot of workers felt that the Weimar Republic was unable to handle the economic crisis of the Great Depression. They felt that they were not able to take care of the people, right? Instead of taking care of the people, they're making things even more difficult. So this led to a lot of the workers supporting the German Communist Party. All right. So since at that time, if I cannot, I mean, if the Weimar Republic is not doing well, then I'll just go for the opposite, which is naturally the communist. Okay, the Communist Party. And of course, the Communist Party had very similar political set up at that time as the Nazi Party. They had local branches, they had a very effective propaganda machine. So it was a very, very popular party. The communists were very, very popular among the Germans at that time. Okay. Now, during this particular period, the rise of the communists was also very frightening to a lot of the rich businessmen, the big rich business leaders and industrialists. They fear that their businesses will be under the control of the communist government if the communists come into power, because they will lose every single wealth that they have. So a lot of these rich business leaders and industrialists, they decided, I'm not going to vote for the communists. All right. The middle class Germans were also afraid of the communists because they knew they were hostile towards the wealthy Germans. So the land-owning farmers were also worried about the communist takeover. So if it's driving against fear, so what's going to happen? They will naturally support the Nazi Party. Okay, so because of this communist threat, it kind of like pushed the people towards the Nazis, right? The Nazi Party. So at this particular juncture, the people really didn't have much of a choice but to support the Nazis. All right, so no choice. They had to support the Nazi Party already, because between the devil and the deep blue sea, might as well go with Hitler. So in 1933, membership of the Nazi Party, all right, it rose to 800,000 people. All right, and this was the time, 1933, the Nazi Party was able to garner about 107 seats in the 1930 Reichstag election. It was because Hitler, he used his very powerful, persuasive, and charismatic oratorical skills, right, to take advantage of the Great Depression. So he used his own abilities and he ride on an external factor, which is a Great Depression, all right, because that was happening around the world, doom and gloom everywhere. And then he comes in like a knight in shining armor to take care of the people. So this was how the Hitler factor, right, was the winning support of the people. He won the support of the people, right, because he was like a, knight in shining armor coming, on a stallion, like a savior trying to save the entire country, right? Because the rest of the other things were all in shambles, right? Although he lost the presidential race against Hindenburg, because he wanted to become a president, right? But he lost against Hindenburg in 1932. He decided to come back even stronger, campaign even higher, right? And to make himself very, very well known to the German people. So as a result, right, through Goebbels, his minister of propaganda, right, he started media, wide variety of media, print, radio, film, posters everywhere to spread that message, right, the Nazi ideology to the German masses. So he believed, right, not only just through print and radio, because at that time, right, Hitler strongly believed in his physical presence. That means he must physically, there in all the speeches going all over Germany, rural Germany, right, in order to run his tour, the rally lah. So these were called rallies. He would go on a, no, he would ride on a plane. He would go to all over all the rural areas in Germany, and he would speak directly to the farmers, to the, to the landowners, right? And this gave people the impression that he was a very dynamic leader, very modern, because back in the time during the Weimar, the politicians never traveled into the rural areas. They usually stayed within, the city area, and that's it. They never go further than that. But then because Hitler wanted to have strong support of the rural people as well, he started to travel to all parts of Germany, right, spreading his Nazi ideology. Okay, so because of that, right, like a leader or a political leader coming to them, approaching them, it made the people feel that, wow, Hitler really, the Nazi Party really understood their problems, and they're willing to work solutions, right, to help the people. So of course that gave, the Nazi Party the support lah. He rebranded his image lah as a man of the people, strong commitment to solve the Germans' economic woes. And that was how he started to gain a lot of traction, a lot of power, and also a lot of support, right, from the German masses. So at that time, besides the Hitler factor, there was also a strong use of propaganda. All right, so it's coupled with that use of propaganda. And of course, Joseph Goebbels was a master. He's a master of propaganda, and he was like a propaganda machine, appealing to people's emotions, people's portrayal and perception of the Nazi Party. So during that time, there were a lot of rallies, right? Rallies in all over Germany, right? And the rallies are usually organized in a very strict manner, such that it gave people the impression that, that the Nazi Party is in control, they are very organized, and they also know what they're doing. Okay, this gave people the confidence in the Nazi Party. So the Goebbels, Joseph Goebbels, he also used a lot of Nazi leaflets to spread the message that economic problems were caused by the Treaty of Versailles, caused by the November criminals, all right? And then the unfair war reparations. Now, all these, right, is basically used propaganda to rile up the general public. Okay, so he like to blame the German problems on the Weimar politicians, blame him on the Jews, right? Saying that the German people needed a solution, and he was able to come up with a solution. And also within his speech, he will also speak about rebuilding Germany's armed forces. And I think this was actually something that he tried to weave it in, because he felt that Germany had already lost not only his territories, but they also lost a great deal of defense, which is part of the German pride, and he's going to rebuild the German forces, right? And this would create millions of jobs to kickstart the economy. So of course, this became extremely attractive to the people, and this is actually part of the propaganda machine of Joseph Goebbels. So a lot of industrialists, farmers, landowners, middle class, workers, they all started to support the Nazi Party. So now having the support, he's going to think, okay, how am I going to get the full support of the SS and the SAs especially? Okay, so during the Great Depression in Germany, it was extremely chaotic. There were a lot of frequent street battles, cities, towns, groups, unemployed workers. All right, they were protesting. So what happened was they got the SS and the SA to work, all right, and to instill law and order in German society. And this was, they felt, for once, when people felt, oh, there is some form of control and organization, they were very relieved. The German people were very relieved that the SA was prepared to fight the communist gangs who were the ones who creating all this trouble. So it was as if, wow, SAs are there to protect us, right? To stabilize, to keep peace. So obviously it gave people the impression that the Nazi Party is the savior, is the right party. Right? All these were planned, right? These are all planned to give people the impression that the Nazi Party, right, has discipline, has orderliness, law and order, right, and some form of that it will be able to instill peace and also calm among the general public. So finally, he becomes a chancellor of Germany. How did he become a chancellor? So first of all, President Hindenburg, he was the one who stood between Hitler's goal of gaining ultimate power between 1929 to 1932, because he was actually trying to become, a president at that time. But of course, Hindenburg became the president. So at that time, being a national hero and well respected by the people, he was the president of the Weimar Republic from 1925 to 1929. Now, but by 1932, he actually wanted to retire from politics, right? He said, but was persuaded to stand for elections against Hitler, who was also wanting to become president at that time. So therefore, Hindenburg had no choice but to stand against Hitler, but he did not trust Hitler and the Nazi Party. So he said, no, I don't trust Hitler to become the president. So no choice, President Hindenburg also came in to stand for elections. And of course, President Hindenburg won. So in 1932, President Hindenburg won the presidential election, and he appointed Brüning, right, as a chancellor. But Brüning was not well liked. He was not well liked by the general public. So this made and also of course he then appointed Franz von Papen. He's a wealthy landowner. He's not interested in politics at all. So it was finally Franz von Papen who decided, hey, no, let's get Hitler. Let's get Hitler to become the chancellor instead. Okay, because originally, when the Nazi Party proved Hindenburg wrong by garnering the most votes because of popularity, right? So Hitler demanded to be the chancellor, but Hindenburg said, no, I'm going to keep Franz von Papen as the chancellor instead. But Franz von Papen was unable to form a majority government, right? Then no choice. Hindenburg had to call for another election again. And this time, the Nazi Party won the most votes. Okay, they won the most votes. Now, Hindenburg at that time, he started to use his powers in Article 48. And Article 48, again, what is it? It is actually to give him ultimate power, all right, without having to seek the permission of the Reichstag when he wants to make any law. So at that time, Hindenburg was getting very, very desperate. He wanted to form a new government for Germany already. So he met up with Von Papen, Hindenburg and Von Papen, they met up with the rich industrialists, and they started, okay, we're going to offer Hitler the post of chancellor. All right, because he was able to garner the majority votes. Let's see. Okay, so Von Papen was selected as vice chancellor to keep Hitler in check. All right, so Hitler had won the most votes, right? So he became the chancellor, but Von Papen became the vice chancellor. So here, this is the nice picture of Hindenburg with a curly mustache. Henrik Brüning, not a popular guy. Look at his face. He's also not a popular guy. Von Papen, no, he's a rich industrialist. He doesn't really have much to do. Not very keen in politics, but he was appointed by Hindenburg, right, to keep to keep Hitler in check lah. All right, to keep Hitler in check. All right, so finally, the rise of the Nazi Party. Okay, I'm going to stop here because it's really, really a lot. And this is just only part one. All right, the next part that we're going to do is that Hitler and how he actually consolidated his power. So what I've done today is from the Weimar Republic, okay, right after 1919, right, from World War I all the way to 1932 or 1933, all right, up to how Hitler actually rose to power. So after he rose to power, after he became so-called the chancellor, what did he do? And this will be the second part, which is Hitler's consolidation of power. Now, what I need you to do, okay, is to, number one, read through that first part, right? From the Weimar Republic all the way to how he rose to power. So it's a sequence of events, the problems, the challenges that the Nazi Party faced, right? And the key factors that led to the Nazi Party gaining support. How did it gain support? So basically, those are a few things that I need you to look at, right, before we move on to Hitler's consolidation of power in the next lesson. Okay, so recap, I need you to read through notes, read through your textbook and read through your notes, okay? And understand the key events that occurred. And that would form some form of a basis for our next chapter that I'll be doing Hitler's consolidation of power before we embark on SPQ. Now, you have to be extremely good, well-versed with your content first before you embark on your SPQ for history. Right? This is unlike Sec 2 history, Sec 1 history. You can figure out, by guessing the inference. But for upper secondary history, if you do not have sufficient content to support your understanding, you will not be able to do the SPQs at all. Okay, so please remember, pre-reading is required. I need you to do your pre-reading, and then we'll come back in 2 weeks' time to do Hitler's consolidation power, and then we will start off with SPQ practices. Okay, thank you so much. Bye-bye.